welcome back to the Quest for Success podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in once again.
Yeah, we have Vajira Weerasekara, our special guest today. And Vajira is a business leader. We can talk about Vajira a bit more in detail. But we only met Vajira just before you left to Singapore. Like, you've been here many years, but we only get to meet you only a few years back. And so welcome, Vajira. Thanks for joining us to the Quest for Success podcast.
Thank you, Dylan, and thank you, Jamita, for taking the time to have me here. I'm delighted to be here. I'm gonna figure out how this is gonna go. So
that's it. This is conversation.
I'm just here for you. So
yeah, awesome. Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. So we like to start and really understand what our guests' definition of success is. So I want to start on that point.
Okay.
Currently, what is your definition of success?
Wow. Pretty deep, huh?
Yeah, deep question to start.
So, actually, for me, success, I've been thinking about this, right? I think if you think about success, for me, it's not just one thing, right? Because I really like, I don't know, I'll probably butcher this particular quote. I think it was Churchill that said, it's something along the lines of, success is not kind of an endpoint. And when I think about success, it's not an endpoint. Then you talk about, okay, the opposite of that is kind of failure. Failure is not also fatal or is not endpoint. And it's the journey that you go through and how resilient you are and your courage to actually get through all of these things, to me, is the success, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Because, you define, like you take a project or you take an activity and they say, right, there's a milestone, we achieved it, it's successful. That event might be successful. But to get there, you went through so many other things, ups and downs and so on. Did you have the resilience to actually withstand all of that to get to that end point? So when I look at success, I don't look at success as an endpoint. But to me, if I have managed to go through a journey to get to whatever that is that I'm doing, so I look at that as the success, right? How did I fare going through all of this to get to that end point? So I don't know whether that...
that's interesting point that you're making. It's not just what you're achieving at the end. It's the whole journey that you're looking at, see how I achieve, like the bigger picture, the overall.
That's right.
Yeah.
And the thing is, like, for example, you do anything like in life, whether where you pick a project, right? Or you pick, like, say, I'm into technology. So you develop an application.
Yeah.
You release the application. Is that success? Or is the success when somebody starts using it and benefiting from that?
Absolutely.
And is that success?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that's why when I think about success, I don't necessarily think about success as one particular thing or an event. I look at the whole journey that you have to go through, and how do you come out of that journey at the end of it. And if I have come out at the end of that journey going through all the ups and downs, and I have learned and grown through the process, to me, that's success, not necessarily that project or that event or that book or whatever, right? It's that whole journey. So I guess maybe another way of, paraphrasing that or summarizing is to say, it's the journey and the learning, right?
Yeah.
I value that than an event.
Nice. So Vajira, that's really good. A lot of thinking behind it, right? So thank you for that. And what we want to talk about now is more like Vajira. Like, so we didn't do a detailed introduction. So we like to know, people don't know who's Vajira Weerasekara. Can you please take us through, like, what do you do now and a little bit of your background?
Okay.
Please.
Well, that's so I like to first describe, I'm a dad.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
So a proud dad, I must say, with 2 sons. And also I actually enjoy spending time with family. So that's who I am as a person. So I'm in my element when I have the time with, and that's, for example, this week I'm here with
Nice.
Kali, my wife, to see the 2 boys. So we are spending time together. So when we are together, so that's part of Vajira, if you like, for the home life, right?
Yep.
Then there's the Vajira at work and everything that I do outside. So right now, I'm part of Red Hat, which is part of IBM.
Yeah.
I run their tech sales organization for APAC. But prior to that, I was with Microsoft for nearly 26 years,
Wow.
doing various different roles based out of Sydney, most of it. And I had Sydney roles, I had APAC roles, during that journey. And that originally from Sri Lanka.
Yeah.
But I then grew up there, but then went to Dublin in Ireland. So spent about 6 or 7 years in Dublin, studying, did a bit of work, and then came back. Actually, after 6 or 7 years, we decided to go somewhere, and then we thought, actually, let's go to Australia for a bit.
Yeah.
So we landed in Australia.
When was that, Vajira?
That would have been almost now talking about 32 years
Wow.
ago, long
Okay.
time ago.
Yeah, yeah.
So we were in Dublin, and after spending the time there in Ireland, we thought, okay, it was Kali and me. We thought, okay, let's just go somewhere. We picked Australia, came to Australia. We were here for about a year, but I ended up actually traveling back and forth to US with the
Yeah.
company that I was in at the time. And then there was an opportunity that came up in US, so went to US, spent a bit of time in US, and then decided after about a year, no, actually Sydney was better.
Yeah,
So then
yeah.
decided to actually come back
Yeah.
to Sydney. So I've always, taken opportunities to explore,
Yep.
right? And I like when there's a new challenge, when I don't know much about, that I need to get in there and actually learn. And I was, talking to somebody the other day, like they were asking, like, so why did you move from US back to Australia?
Yeah.
And one of the things that happened was after we spent about a year in US, we thought, actually, I think Australia, we really like the lifestyle here, and then decided to come back. And funny part is that when I decided to come back, I went to the company I was working with, my boss at the time. I said, his name was Enzo. I said, Enzo, I've decided to leave. I'm going back to Australia. He said, like, why? I said, we both really kind of don't, feel home
Yep.
here in the US. We just want to go back to Sydney. So he said, come back tomorrow and let's talk about this. So tomorrow came and I went there. So he gave me this envelope, right? He said, have a look at this and then you decide. So obviously some kind of a counter offer.
Yeah.
I didn't open it. And I went home and sat down with Kali. I said, okay, there's a counter offer. Do we open it or do we go back to Sydney, right? We didn't open it. So we both said, no, like no point, because our heart is set, right?
Yep.
So I went back and I gave it to him and I said, we are going. I said, did you have a look at it? I said, no. He went like ballistic. He go like, why? I said, what's the point, right? Our heart is set. I opened this and maybe I might actually then stay for the wrong reason, right? He just couldn't figure it out. So then we left. I, kept touching with him over a couple of years, and time to time he'll ping me saying, "Do you want to know what was in it?" I said, "No, don't tell me now, because no." But I say that sort of in a funny way as well. But that was a true story. To me, I've never looked back, because sometimes you have to go with like what you feel and what where your heart is. And then you'll work it out, right?
Have you
And then
actually opened that envelope at all?
No.
Do you know
guys,
where
I still don't have it, right? I mean, I gave it back to him. I don't know what was
Oh,
in
you
it.
gave back to him.
Maybe there was only $5. I don't know, right?
Yeah.
But I share that with my boys as well, because sometimes money really can't define what you want to do, right? And sometimes you can do the wrong thing or take a wrong decision
Absolutely.
because of that. But then you in our case, it was like in the movie, you take the red pill or the blue pill, right? You never look back. Right?
Yeah. So I want to go a little bit further back.
Okay.
When you grew up in Sri Lanka,
Yeah.
I want to know a little bit about your early years, and then also how you kind of transitioned into technology.
Yeah. Okay. So that's going pretty deep. Frankly, when I was growing up in Sri Lanka, like, I think if you ask my friends around, they'll probably kind of describe me as a rebel, because I really didn't study. I really didn't,
That's interesting.
do much. I was just basically interested in doing everything apart from studies. Right?
Yep.
And I think what happened was when I finished my A levels, and at that time, so I didn't get elected to go to university or anything like that, because I wasn't studying. and then I managed to get to and do a program at NIBM, the National Institute of Business Management. Because at that time universities were closed anyway, but they wouldn't take me anyway because I didn't have enough marks to go to a university, right? So so I did the program there in IBM. So it was a diploma in computer studies. So that kind of was one of the formal entries. But before that, you started playing with the Sinclair ZX Spectrum and then the early days of computing and all of that, right? But then I think the NIBM gave me a chance to kind of go a little bit deeper in there. And that time, that institute started a joint venture with a university in Dublin. So I went on to do the master's or the high diploma in that particular NIBM. So then everybody so I managed to do well in the two programs there. So because you had good marks there, they said, oh, okay, if you want to go to Dublin, we can give you an exemption from the 3-year degree to do it in 2 years. So I thought, oh, okay, that's pretty cool. So that's kind of took me to Dublin to say, okay, and that's where I ended up in Dublin in the journey. So my school days back there, I was doing, all sorts of sports activities, cadetting, basketball, all of that, hanging out with friends, and the stuff that you do.
Yeah. And was there any influence from your parents?
So my parents, so both of them didn't study, so they didn't have an educational background. So my dad did business, and my mom was at home. So I don't think I actually got this particular track through my dad. Interestingly, I think, we were talking about earlier, we had very different ideas, right? So my dad had a very different way of, and that's how he grew up. And time to time, every time we tried to compare ideas, it was almost like they were never meeting.
No.
Because he wanted his way of doing things, and I had my ideas, and they never kind of came together. So to some extent, I pretty much wanted to do everything that my dad didn't do, right? Which was part of it was also education. So that's when I think in my kind of family there, so I was the first to actually get a university degree of some sort. So that was another avenue that I thought, okay, I need to do something different to what dad is doing because and somehow when I look at it, what he was doing was great, like doing tea estate, rubber estate. So he was into jamming and kind of mining, but it really didn't click with me, right? And I kind of grew up, thinking about other things around technology and business. So that's how I ended up in the path that I'm in right now.
Yeah. And you talked about how you and your father didn't have much in common.
Yeah.
Are you trying to change that with your children?
Absolutely, right? It's well, I think it was. So I'm a big fan of Tony Robbins, and one of his events, he said, everything that happens to you in life, you look at, there's a gift in everything that actually happens, right? So one of the things is that when I look at bringing up my two sons, I'm doing, okay, I need to do everything that my dad didn't do with the two sons that I have, so I can be so close to them.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that was another thing. So that's, to your point, Dylan. I mean, we had a great relationship with my dad, but it was not very common. We didn't have anything common. But I wanted to actually change that with, the sons that I have. So with Viran and Yannick, I think, at least hopefully from my perspective, you would ask the question from the two of them, how they feel. But you learn, right? Then you go, okay, what can I do to make sure that I'm there for their soccer games or some of their debating, practices when they're actually in school. So I made an attempt to be with them as much as I could. Where when going back, kind of I missed that part in my journey with Dad.
Yeah. So I guess I had a similar kind of background, Vajira. We were just talking before because I didn't do very well at school, just like you. I didn't even do sports or anything. I was just hanging out with friends, right? That's it. That's my thing. And I couldn't even get into uni. And I went the same path in NIBM.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah. But I couldn't even finish that because somehow I managed to get into a college because I couldn't even go to university.
Yeah.
but it's a fortune, right? So I signed up for a place called Hunter Institute of Technology in Newcastle.
Yeah.
And Newcastle University actually bought them.
Wow,
Right. So my diploma became a degree.
Wow.
So otherwise, I didn't have enough
We were
marks.
probably hanging out in the same places.
And then again, similar kind of background with my dad. You know, we couldn't get anything like done together. Like even we were digging holes, like those days in Sri Lanka, right?
Yeah.
If you want to put your rubbish, you have to dig a hole, right?
Yeah.
There's no rubbish collection.
Yeah.
We start digging the hole. We end up fighting. We can't somehow. He sees something I'm doing wrong, and I say, "Hey, why are you doing this way?" So we never even start to have a good chat.
Yeah.
Never end up in a good way, right? So I think we're very similar kind of.
And I think it's the generation gap, right? Because I think looking back, you go, I think that's what he knew from his parents, right? And for him, that was the right path to go through, right? And then I kind of look at now. I'm thinking, all right, maybe this is the way. But you ask our kids, they might actually say something totally different, right? So you go through these different journeys.
I think it's part of the human condition, right? It's just as you age, you get a different perspective. And you kind of go, oh, I see where they were coming from now.
It is. And it's not only them, right? Because it's the society and the rest of the fabric that changes things as you go through. Because then you have different values and different networks, and then you try to figure things out in a very different way, right? So I suppose.
Yeah,
I guess, that's part of evolution, I guess, right?
Yeah. And so now moving on to your working career, I suppose.
Yeah.
You said you spent over 20 years at Microsoft.
Yeah.
How did you get into Microsoft, and what was that kind of journey like?
Yeah, so interesting, as I was saying, a lot of things in my life have actually happened because of spur of the moment, like micro decisions, right?
Yeah.
So I told you about we were in Australia after we came back from Dublin, and then we were planning to go to US, and literally we had everything packed to leave Sydney. And Kali and I still remember we were holding the plane ticket. There was an empty apartment. We were just sitting on a mattress on the floor because everything was actually sold. And I was just looking at a newspaper that morning, and I saw this ad for Microsoft Consulting, and I was like, oh, that's actually now here. Like if you imagine, right? So let's say if it was a Monday morning, we were planning to leave on a Friday that week. And so everything is packed, shipped, and we were ready with the plane ticket. I thought, oh, this is actually a very interesting ad.
Yeah.
So I called them, right? And when I called, I got through to a recruiter. I said, hey, I'm interested in this particular role at Microsoft. And they said, can you come for an interview next week? I said, actually, I can't because I'm actually leaving to US. And said, okay, let me see if we can arrange something this week. So they came back, they rang me back, and they said, actually, based on the kind of profile and the experience you have at that time, this was the experience from Dublin, this is interesting, can we do an interview tomorrow? I said, yeah, sure, right? So I went for an interview. I still remember it's in 65 Epping Road. That was the first Microsoft building in Sydney here. And went for the interview. I had about 2 or 3 interviews, and they said, this is looking promising. We need to do a couple of more interviews next week. And then I remember Hugh Jones was the hiring manager. I still remember. You remember people in your life, And he said, I think we need to kind of get you to meet the GM. And I said, only problem is I'm actually leaving on Friday to US. And at that time, we didn't have a particular plan. He said, we're leaving for about a year or so. And I left, right?
Okay.
And then I was in US, but somehow I always believe you have to kind of build your network and you have to stay true to people, right? And I kept in touch with him, and over time, and then living in US for almost a year, towards the end of that, when they decided we want to come back, I rang him, right? I said, hey, remember that crazy guy came for an interview and then just disappeared?
Did they actually offer you a job? Or
No. So at that time, because they had to do a final interview.
Okay, but you were not available.
So I was not available, so I just left. And then I said, is that role by the way still there, or can I still get a go there. So he said, yeah, let's do that. So then they scheduled a few more interviews remotely while I was in Virginia at the time. I said, yeah, I think this is good. We actually have a role that you can take on. So pretty much then I landed and then went for a in-person interview, and then there it was. So that was the start of my Microsoft journey, and I joined there in the consulting team.
Oh, nice. So Vajira, something I've noticed throughout like 27 years in Microsoft and then now Red Hat, more than technology, you're a real people manager, right?
Yeah.
The people leader. Explain, like, what's the strength in like what you learn throughout these years at corporate?
It's a great question, Amita, because to me, linking back to Dylan, to your question about success, success is about are you actually helping somebody else, when it comes to people. And I say this to all my leaders and my managers that if you're a people manager, you can't fake that, right? You have to truly care for your people.
Absolutely.
And I think even for me, it took a while because I was an individual contributor for several years. I remember the first time I became a manager. On a Friday, you actually get the role that says, "Hey, you're a people manager."
Yeah.
Monday morning, you turn up to work and you go, "Oh, I'm a people manager." What does
People
that mean?
report to you, yeah.
Right. And the thing is, right? At the time, this is going back, 30 plus years. For me, there was no specific training to say, "Hey, today you're a people manager." What does that really mean? Apart from a bunch of people reporting to you.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, okay, this is about kind of managing this team, and kind of went along. But it took me a while to really understand that until you truly love what you do in terms of managing people, caring for people, it's not just about telling them what to do, right? It's really caring about, okay, how are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, what is your passion?
Yeah.
What can I do to help you kind of get you to your team? And once you get to that, then you go actually really enjoy it, because that's what I love, right? So for all my career, yes, you're right. Technology. Again, the same thing. I was with Microsoft for 26 years, very different set of technologies. And even when Red Hat knocked on my door and said there's this role available, and I told even on the first conversation, I know nothing about Red Hat technology because I've been a Microsoft guy for all these years. I said, no, there are other things that you can bring to the table. And hopefully some of the things they saw was what I can do in building the team and helping somebody else. So, that is one thing that I truly enjoy in the current role as well. It's seeing what can you do to impact and help somebody else. And then also seeing that they go and do amazing things, right? Helping and coaching somebody. Not just at work, like even outside of work. Yeah, it's about helping other people, right? So I really, really enjoy that.
Yeah. And Vajira, we've got your book here, Motivating Mavericks.
Wow. Okay.
Which is all about, trying to build high performing teams.
Yeah.
And I guess that's kind of what you've done at these big corporate companies. What are some of the key takeaways? What are some of the key secrets to building a high performing team?
Oh, great question. So, if I think it also comes down to ultimately, right? Are you creating an environment where people can truly perform at a level whatever they want to do, right? Is it a safe environment? Are you encouraging people to speak up? Are you making them feel safe or heard as well, right? And there's multiple of those. And if you can create an environment where people enjoy what they do, right? They are who they are. And if they have an issue, they can, bubble up the issues, fast enough. Failure is not looked up as a issue.
Yeah.
It's actually great because
Learning opportunity.
You're pushing the edge of whatever you think is the limit. Right? And if you create that environment, then you're getting into that, right? Because it comes down to the way I look at it is that, if I look at my journey and I've gone through ups and downs in terms of my performance, what were the times when I was like really at the peak and then look at why was that.
Right.
You know, I had an amazing manager or a mentor.
Yeah.
I had an amazing environment where with amazing set of colleagues. And if you can recreate that for everybody, then you get into the situation where people truly care about what they do and they care about each other. Then you have a really well performing team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because interesting, right? So, I mean, one of the key reasons for people to stay or leave,
Yeah.
their manager,
Yeah.
their team leader, right? So,
Yeah.
if you have a great relationship, if you can build that environment that you're talking about, for them to shine,
Yeah.
and that's the leadership is all about, right? It's about having that leader mentality, not leader follower mentality.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
and it's a really good point, Jamita, because one of the things that we talk about within our teams as well, as a leader, your job is not to create followers,
Yeah.
right? Your job is to actually
Bring
create
leaders.
other leaders.
Yeah.
And if you can do that, then you're building an environment where people feel like, oh wow, okay, this is an environment I can thrive.
Yep.
And the other thing is, people talk about leadership and then talk about empathy, right? And then there's another great. I learned this from one of the podcasts that I did with another colleague of mine. She's an executive coach, right? So she told me this thing where sometimes we say, oh, Jamitha, we are in the same boat.
yeah.
The moment you say we are in the same boat,
Yeah.
you're screwed, right? Because you have not really understood.
Yep, no
the
empathy,
situation.
right?
No
Like,
empathy.
yeah.
So what she said is, and I practice this and I share this with my team as well. I said, no, I think it's better to say that we are in different boats,
Yeah.
but we are in the same storm.
Okay.
And then when I heard that, I was like, that is so cool, because then that means I will never understand your boat. Your boat one day could be going up, my boat is going down. We are in the same storm. Another day, my boat is going up, yours is going down.
Yeah.
Because your boat is filled with your work, your family, your
Yeah.
health, and all of that, right? If we think that we understand each other's boats, we're kidding ourselves.
Yeah.
Right? So that's where whenever I have a situation at work or with a friend or whatever, I always actually think about I will never know what's going on in this other person's boat.
Yeah.
So how do I create an environment where they feel safe to talk about the boat so we can help each other? Because one day I'll need your help. Another day, we can help each other, right? So that's another part where I think come back to people leadership. Empathy is a big part.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a big word people use around, but how do you put that into practice? And to me, that analogy actually helps me to put that into practice, because that way I'll start with the basis that I will never understand another person,
Yeah.
and you don't want to pretend to understand.
Yep.
You need to be curious to actually help them, and then you actually practice empathy, right?
Yeah.
I want to get your advice or your perspective on something. Something I've seen with a lot of leaders that I've worked with is there's either the people who try and become friends with their team to kind of earn their respect that way. But then that's a bit of a slippery slope, because being too close to your employees, you can sometimes lose their respect.
Yeah.
So how do you gaining the respect, but having that balance?
To me, and this is again something I don't think I'll have the perfect answer, but the way I have seen it is, again, what I've learned through the years is that being true to yourself in what you do. So what I mean by that, Dylan, is, let's say, for example, if you have a team or set of colleagues that you're working with, how are you really helping them first, right? So your scenario is like, you're a manager, you've got a team of people, you can get them to work and perform by being really friendly, right? Or are you a really hard taskmaster telling them exactly what to do? The way I look at this is going, am I truly connecting with this person to understand what they want to do, and am I helping them to perform at their best, right? So let's take a scenario where somebody in the team is not performing well. Like, what do? You can be really nice and say, hey, this is not working, blah, blah, blah. Or you can truly put the effort to understand their board and figure out, how do I help, and coach and mentor. Then if you've done that really, that you can put your hand on heart and go, I've really, really spent the time with Dylan to help him get better, somehow it's not working. Then as a manager, you've earned the right to go, Dylan, you know what? We've had this conversation for the last 2 weeks. It's not working, pal. Now we have to actually go through a formal process to help you again come out of it. So, in work, we call performance improvement plan, PIPs. And then this is another thing I tell my team is that as a manager, when you put somebody on a performance improvement plan, if you put somebody on a PIP with the intention of getting rid of that person, you've failed as a manager, right? You cannot do that to people, right? So I say, when you put somebody on a PIP, you have to be able to put your hand on heart and go, I want to actually start the formal PIP because I have done the informal coaching. They didn't work. I want to give this person a last chance to really improve. And then be very clear, okay? At the end of that performance improvement plan, it's a T-junction. You turn left, it's an exit. You turn right, you've done well. And you want to go through hoping to turn right, right? Then if you do that as a leader, towards the end of that day, if you unfortunately have to get somebody to turn left, you can actually go home and sleep well. Because you've truly put the effort to help them. Right?
And you've done the right thing.
And done right. And they'll respect you for that. Because they have, otherwise you cannot short circuit that. So that's why. So I guess I hopefully I answered that question.
Yeah, definitely.
That's very good.
That's how I look at that, and it's a really slippery slope, right? It's because very easy for people to get into the trap of saying, "Hey, it's not working, and it's a short-term thing. I need to bring somebody that's high-performing, so I have to get rid of somebody." You can't do that to people. You have to let them actually go through the process. And as a leader, the best you can do is to have a very clear timeline. The other thing, a lot of mistakes people make is that you go on this informal coaching like for a too long a period, right? Because you are afraid to actually get onto that formal path. But then you're not doing a service to the person, because then they think they're performing, but they're not really performing.
I suppose honesty plays into it then as well.
That's what it is. It's honesty and being really true to yourself in what you do, right? Then you can really hold your head high and say, hey, we had an informal conversation to help you. It didn't work. We put you through a formal plan. We were very clear. It was really to help you. That didn't work as well. Then sometimes you have to get to a point where you have to, make a decision.
Hey, sorry to interrupt. I just had a huge favor to ask you guys. Over 90% of you who are listening to this episode right now aren't subscribed or aren't following us on your favorite streaming service. So if you could do yourself and us a massive favor, go and click that subscribe or follow button. It means we can grow the show, which means we can get bigger and better guests on for you guys. And with that, back to the episode.
So that's really good, Vajira. We could talk whole day about this leadership and team building kind of thing. And I remember you came to Be Dynamic Logistic, my business, and gave us a motivation talk. That was awesome. Like even the guys still talking about it. So which is awesome. And talking about people, how I also see you bringing people together. That's one of the strengths that you have. You shown me very little time that I know you. Talking about bringing people together, we want to talk about your charity. So something I know you're very passionate about, and Run for Life, right? And can you take us through why did you start that, and what's this charity about? And please.
Yeah, so the charity that I have is what's called Let Kids Fly, right? Let Kids Fly. And that's a foundation Kali and I, my wife and I, started with the two boys some time ago with the intent of actually really helping underprivileged children with education. Right? So again, kind of going back to, we are all, I think, fortunate. Somehow we had an opportunity to do what we are doing today, but there's so much we can do for people, right? So that actually got started. What you're talking about, the Run for Life, and then the Life of the Run, this book, was a project that I started some time ago. That was at the back of, I was doing a lot of running at the time, and I was helping a couple of other charities, and we did a lot of runs to raise funds for various charities, like what you're doing with the Sleep Out as well, and we all do that. And then during the pandemic is when a couple of my friends said, hey, we did this lot of different projects in the past to bring people together with these charities and runs that I was doing. Why don't we do something with your running story? And that's when I thought, actually, if I can take on a challenge for myself to run. At that time, I took a challenge to run 500 kilometers, with consecutive runs.
Wow.
And I thought, okay, if I can do that on a platform to collect funds for a cause as well. And at that time, this was the Let Kids Fly Foundation. We were providing scholarships for children. So all those ideas came together. So that started the Run for Life as a platform. And what I didn't realize was how quickly it was going to get picked up by various people, because it was also during the pandemic. People were also trying to make a connection with each other. And this platform became a point where people can say, hey, I can bring my team onto it. So we had different companies come along and join. And we had Microsoft, and at the time, I was not part of Red Hat at the time. So a team from Red Hat, some colleagues came on like that. So we had, I think, if I remember, over almost like 36 different countries, 1,500 odd people came onto the platform. And the idea was to, really help each other with their running activity. So I started the Run for Life first with my running journey, 500 kilometers in consecutive runs.
Yeah.
Then the next project I did with Run for Life is, rather than just me running, let's get people to run, cycle, swim. So that became the platform. Right. So we just finished that one, and then towards the end of that, I was going like, okay, there's a lot of people. They joined for different reasons. And we collected all their stories, which became the Life of the Run. And that was inspired by that book, Humans of New York.
Nice.
It was all stories about people, right? So, your point about connecting people, what I really loved that was the fact that we saw people actually join the project for health reasons. People joined the project to inspire somebody else. People joined the project to actually help, Let Kids Fly. So there was no mandatory requirement to donate to the thing. Mine was more about getting the people together. If they like the idea of helping the charity, that they can help as well. And I still have people sometimes come back and say during COVID, when they join different companies, they have actually used the Run for Life as a platform to stay connected with people, because they're all working remotely. Right?
Oh, wow.
So that was again, idea that came very quickly, and then we just put it into practice, and then suddenly, it just took a life of its own.
Did you initially started this to help fund Let Kids Fly charity, or that?
Yeah. So there were a couple of other charities. So I supported another charity a long time ago.
Yeah.
That was building this palliative care hospital and the foundation there. Then we actually had the Let Kids Fly, which was our charity, and that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to actually use this platform to help the children's education one. So what we are doing at the moment with that is really picking children that are underprivileged, in this case in Sri Lanka. And we select the children through the Peradeniya University. So they have a selection program, but sometimes they don't have the funds to fund all of the children. So we pick up the overflow of that. And then also through other friends and colleagues in remote places, we go and pick the children to support. And sometimes you think it takes millions to support. It doesn't, right? A couple of dollars sometimes go a long way in a country like Sri Lanka. And sometimes it's not just the money, also spending the time with these children and coaching as well, because sometimes they don't even have somebody that can show them the path. And that's another part of it. So I really like that part of it. I wish I had more time to go and spend. But every time we go to Sri Lanka, we try to do some of that. But Kali is actually doing a lot of that work at the moment. Managing.
So what made you decide to go into like helping children's education?
I think when we sort of think about the life that we have had the opportunity to develop, and then once you have your own children, you go, somehow we were fortunate and privileged to have the life to be able to give the education, right? And when you go and some of the villages and you talk to the children, and they don't have that opportunity, right? So we thought, okay, I think the education is the only way you can bring somebody through their journey.
It's funny, right? We only realized later in the life.
Right? But the funny part was, right, we had fortunately or unfortunately, we had life where if we had put our heads together,
Yeah.
we had all the facilities.
Oh, yeah.
Just that we didn't use
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
But there are a set of children that they don't even have the basics.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like, for example, with all of this, sometimes we think we can solve the problem once we identify the problem.
Yeah.
So, one of the learnings from the Red Kids Fly, when we initially started, we thought, okay, we need to find a way to fund these scholarships or facilities for education.
Yeah.
Right? Then when we did this first project with a very remote school of Ahaliagoda, when we visited the school, the problem was not education. The kids didn't have even breakfast to get to school. So then you go, how do you then get children to actually start studying when they don't have anything to eat? So we then kind of, changed the plan there and said, like, let's create a breakfast program. And then all of a sudden we found, over 6-7 months, the teachers actually saying, actually now the attendance have gone up.
Wow.
Because the children are coming to school to eat.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
That is something we take for granted. Right? So sometimes, solving the problem is, you think you're going to solve this problem, but when you try to actually really get on the ground and try to figure it out, actually you can't even touch that problem before you actually solve the first problem, right?
Yeah. You have to
So
build the foundation.
You have to build the foundation. If kids are not actually eating anything, how are they going to actually, stay in class and study? So there's a whole area where every time you look at, there's so much you can do,
Yeah. Do you know how many children that you're supporting at the moment back in Sri Lanka?
So at the moment, I think currently we have about 13 students. So they're all. So we went through initially supporting children at the younger ages.
Yeah.
But now we've found that actually it's more effective if you just pick students that are just going into uni. So these are about 13, 14 students that are in uni. That in different university programs. So each of these scholarships that we are doing, anywhere from 3 to 5 years. So that different subject, right? Could be medicine. We've actually had in law, interior design. We've had some.
Wow.
And it rotates, right? So depending on the type of students that we get. And then also the funding that's coming through from the donors, etc. And thanks, Zamita. I know you're sponsoring some of them as well, so really appreciate that. And I think that's another area where we both really enjoy the time. And every time we go down to Sri Lanka, we go and actually see some of these children.
Yeah, that's amazing. So you get to actually understand their challenges and things like that, even to the medical students level. Yeah.
It is.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And it's an opportunity for them, right?
Yeah, and learn from you as well. Your background, Carly's background, and So
So, with your permission, I'd like to kind of go on a bit of a left-hand turn, and talk about a personal challenge that you had. I was reading on LinkedIn. You posted about you had a bout of cancer, and that kind of made you reflect on a lot of things. And you wrote about it very eloquently, but I'd like you to share some of that experience and how it changed your perspective on things.
Yeah, I thought hard and fast about writing and then publishing it, right? So the summary of that is it came out of the blue. I was about I think almost now 6-7 months ago. I went in for a checkup. We talk about sort of second decisions in life. This was another one of those things where, if not for that microsecond decision that I took, where I was really busy at work and I got this bit of a pain in my tummy area. I thought, okay, should I actually get this checked or not, right? And then I thought, no, actually, I was super busy. I decided somehow, I don't know why, decided to go to the doctor. And then when I went there, the pain was actually a trigger that was totally unrelated. And then that's when the surgeon actually said, oh, actually, this is not related. But the good and the bad news is that we found there is actually a cancer. But the good news is you are so lucky because this pain brought you here, and we detected this so early, because this type of cancer, they say typically when it's detected, it's too early. So for me, it's another one of those things where when you need to make a decision, when you have to do something, I hate procrastinations, right? So go do it, and then sometimes you might be wrong with the decision, but then you learn from it, right? But waiting for something for too long is one. So that was one thing that reassured me. My gut was telling me, go get this checked. So after that, I tell everybody, go get yourselves tested, right, for everything, because we don't know what's going on. But coming back to your question, Dylan, what it taught me is, in summary, I now only care about big rocks, right? I don't really care about like little rocks, because the perspective for life has actually changed. So I kind of look at that and go, that could have been a kind of a worse situation for me. It's almost like, for some luck, it given me a second chance, right? Because it could have been so fatal if it was not detected, right? And then, so when I look at things now, I prioritize things in very, very different ways, right? Because little things sometimes I used to worry about, I'm going like, does it even matter, right? It doesn't, right? And and then also spending time with people that you care about is more important now than anything else. So there are certain things, and that translates back into work as well, right? So you only have a certain, limited amount of time. Are you putting that time in a way it's meaningful for you as well for the people around you, whether it's work and at home? So absolutely, it has given me a wake-up call. And that's why I decided to actually share that. Yeah. The other thing that was the reason I was hesitant to kind of share, because I have had, unfortunately, some friends or family and other colleagues who have had a cancer that was actually a worse situation. So sometimes, I was actually feeling also guilty about writing this because I'm going, actually, I was lucky and this is actually early stage cancer. But then somebody that's actually reading this that is in a worst case situation, right? I was hesitant. Should I talk about it? Because not everybody is in this situation. So it was a very complex set of thoughts. I wrote that little kind of LinkedIn thing in a draft, and I kept it there for a long time. And then I thought, actually, if it can help somebody think in a different way, then okay, like who cares, right? And then I just need to get it out there. And interestingly, after I sent that, I had quite a bunch of people came to me separately, in separate messages saying, hey, it really helped me to actually look at the problems they were going through, going back to their boat in a very different way. And some actually had come back to me and said, hey, I'm struggling with a similar thing, and I didn't actually talk about it, but you gave me a different perspective. So for me, I think if it has helped somebody else, that was good. But coming back to your question, Dylan, it definitely helped me to look at life in a very different way, prioritize things differently, right?
Yeah, reprioritize,
Yeah.
And I'm so glad you touched on it, because one of my big takeaways was that last point you wrote about focus more on the big rocks.
Yeah.
And learn to let go of the small things in life, because I'm reading a book at the moment called Unstressable.
Yeah.
And it very much says the same thing. We live in a day and age where we have so many micro stresses. Even within the first 2 minutes of waking up, we're already stressed.
Yeah, because the phone is
going. Because the phone's going off, just little things, and learning to appreciate that, to let go of the little things, and don't take the big things around you for granted, the people that you care about, and the real challenges that you have. And I think also the other point I wanted to raise, especially for men, going to the doctor to get things checked is very much a big deal. I'm exactly the same. I've been putting off going to the ear, nose and throat specialist for years now. And I finally went and did it. And I think it's great to share your story.
Absolutely.
And to
creating awareness as well.
Exactly. Create awareness and get more people to go, that thing I've been putting off, maybe I should should go and get it checked.
Yeah, yeah. And what's interesting is because, every like after this, all my friends, I've got them to go and get the checks done. So every time, so yesterday I caught up with a bunch of friends from previous team, and everybody said, I did the check, I did the check, I did the check.
Yeah,
right? So
that's
great, right? And that's good. I mean, it touch wood, everybody's okay. But sometimes we just put off these things. Well, I'll get this check, tomorrow, right? But tomorrow might not come,
So, Vajira, talking about we've gone through a whole journey, right, of Vajira, and you also have, apart from running, you also have other hobbies, right? And would you mind sharing, like the carpentry and things like that? You still get to do that? Or
Yeah,
not
so
really?
one thing I'm missing is, so one of my hobbies is woodworking.
Woodworking.
And I had my workshop here while I was in Sydney. And that's one thing I had to let go when I moved to Singapore. So I do miss, because the space is not there in Singapore.
It was a great thing for me though, because
Yeah,
I
yeah,
inherited
because you ended
quite
up
a
with a
few
whole bunch
your,
of tools,
your
right?
tools.
But no, I think that's definitely a passion and a hobby I still have, and I want to rebuild that workshop one day, and hopefully once I get back at some point.
Yeah. How did that kind of a hobby help you in terms of, you're a corporate guy, right? Like, so working in a bigger business, working with thousands of people, and then, turn your mind off,
Yeah.
right? From that to go into woodwork,
Yeah.
Is that definitely help you or?
Yeah, see, what I have found when I had the workshop, because I was working from home, and like sometimes you get so carried away with what you need to do at work, it's very hard to switch, like truly switch off, right? Even if you read a book, something in the book's gonna bring you back to technology or kind of something in there, right? But what I found with woodworking is when you're there, you're in your zone, right?
Yeah.
You like your Zen zone, like you call it the man cave, for example, right?
Yeah.
And you just get lost in there, and you're really spending the time creating something, and that at the end of that process, you have a piece of furniture or a pen that you have turned or whatever. So I really enjoyed the fact that it is actually very therapeutic. Apart from all the tools you have to go and buy, but that's also therapeutic as well.
Yeah.
So for me, Jonathan, it was a great way for me to have a hobby that I really enjoy, and then it gave me a chance to switch off from work.
Yeah.
Sometimes I do a bunch of woodworking stuff over the weekend, or during the breaks that I have, I might go back and actually tinker with something.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where
You've done amazing work as well. That those tables that you made you won't be able to buy those.
No, you can't. You can't buy some of the, and that's the part of it. Like, so one of the thing, going back to your like original question of success and the journey that you go through, and learning. I really like to pick a topic sometimes that I know nothing about, and then really, really like study and learn. And that doesn't mean that I'll become a master of that. But in my mind, okay, that curiosity for me is one thing. So woodworking was one where, even from small days, like, even in school, I did metal work. I didn't do woodwork at all, right? But maybe the influence came from my grandparents. My mom's father, they had a furniture factory. So I used to go and actually tinker around. Maybe, it goes back there. But it's just self-taught, and then kind of, look at YouTube and everything else,
Yeah. So just to kind of wrap this discussion, what's the future for Vajira?
Great question. What's the future for Vajira? I think if
what's the future look like? For Vajira?
It's interesting, and if I can touch on that question that you had, which was a very deep question about the personal journey, right? And truly, that the night that I got diagnosed with the cancer, I was in the hospital, and Kali was with me that night, so she was sleeping there, and truly, I was just looking at the ceiling and going, okay, if I have to close my eyes today, am I happy? Right? I actually went. Actually, I could say, yeah. I look at the two boys. I'm super proud of what they're doing, and then look at somehow, hopefully, I have managed to kind of impact other people's lives in some way. Then I could sleep forever, right? that was just the wake up moment. I actually had to again to restock and think about other things that I could do with whatever the life that I have left. So from my perspective, Namita, I'm going. I think for what's next for Vajira is really continuing on the journey that I've had. If I can, with the current role that I have, help the teams and help other people achieve whatever the dreams they have. That's what I love, right?
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
what
Yeah.
will help me as well. So I'll continue to do that.
Yeah.
I do like to get back to my woodworking at some point. So that's something I'm passionate about as well. And then really, enjoying the time with the boys and Kali, right? So that to me is the next chapter at some point. And then learn new things as we go along, whether it's around new technology or whether it's around different trends that are happening. So I always keep track of what's going on, because there's no shortage of that in the market. But what's happening with whether it's IT, whether it's AI,
Continue to changing
So talking about that, there's a really good book I'm reading. I think it's called Same as Ever.
Okay.
There are certain things in history, if you look at it at a macro or a micro level, there's a lot of big waves and changes coming, but certain things are the same. The book talks about, I think it goes back, there's a US piece of data in 1940s or 50s. What's the most popular the candy bar in the US? Sneakers. And I go, what's the most popular candy bar in the US now? Sneakers. Right? I was like, I don't have to read the book, like that tells the story. Right. And then you've had Great Depressions, you've got like stock market crashes, everything gone. The sneakers bus apparently somehow survived. Right. So there are certain things there are simple things in life, doesn't change. But we go through this big ups and downs. But for me, if I can continue to help other people in whatever the capacity, whether it's through the charity or whether it's actually from work, coaching and mentoring, or helping share my story, if it helps somebody else,
absolutely.
That's what I love to do.
I mean, that's exactly why we thought it's great to have you on this podcast, as well as the purpose of this podcast. How can we contribute back to others, right? So when we are sharing this story, people will get inspired. They will learn few things, one or two. That's exactly what we want to do, right? Giving back.
And on that note, looking back on your journey, do you feel successful?
Wow. Again, I go back to what I started, right? Do I feel successful? Have I learned through the journey? Yes. Have I had amazing moments? Yes. Have I had pretty shitty moments? Yes. And have I somehow managed to actually build up whatever the resilience needed to actually get through, whether it's the darkest times during long runs, whether it's at work when, either you're truly appreciated or we're not appreciated. So if I put all of that and how I have managed to get through all of those ups and downs, then I'll go, okay, that's how I would define success. I'm going, I'm pretty happy with that.
Yep, that's amazing. And throughout our conversation, I've kind of been jotting down a few things which I think are critical factors which have helped you along your journey to success. I think the first one for me is it's kind of a mix of you're very explorative and also you're open to opportunities. Your journey has changed really quickly from Sri Lanka to Dublin to Australia. You take opportunities as they come up. And that kind of ties into another one. You don't dwell on those decisions too long. You're very quick in your decision making. An opportunity comes up, you decide whether you're going to take it or not. And I think being very clear and decisive is a huge strength, because I think decision paralysis is becoming very big these days, and people take way too long to make a decision. And time is limited, right? So if we can make decisions quicker, it's better. And I think also throughout this conversation, you talked a lot about how much you care about people. And I think that comes through with your leadership, but also how you speak about family and also your charity work as well. You're always looking out for other people around you and how you can serve them. And I think it's kind of goes to the point of servant leadership and trying to lift people up, which I think is having that empathy to support others is really, really powerful. And I think that also ties into you're very good at turning back around and looking back and helping those others, the next ones in line. You realize the journey that you've gone through and the opportunities that you've had may not be afforded to other people, and you want to try and level the playing field. And I think that is really inspiring for me as well. That's definitely something that I want to try and do throughout my life. And finally, the last one is you're a very curious person. When there's something, I think you said you love to do things that you don't know how to do. And I think that's so powerful for activating the brain, keeping yourself learning.
Continuous learning.
Yeah, continuous learning. We've heard it a lot from other people we've had on the show. I think keeping the brain stimulated is another really powerful thing. And, you might not know everything, but I think that kind of ties into your definition of success. It's all about the journey.
Yeah.
So you're always wanting to be 1% better every day and keep learning. And I think that is incredible. And so we'll wrap up there, but thank you so much for giving up your time and coming and sharing some of your knowledge with us today. It's been really, really inspiring.
Thank you. Dunla. It's like you did an amazing job in summarizing that. I was just listening to that, and actually, I was just living through the journey. Like, so I think that's a great way to summarize. So, really appreciate you taking the time, and thank you for doing this. And I really love the way the two of you, the father and son, doing the podcast together. That's another nice way for the two of you to connect and learn from each other as well.
Absolutely.
Really appreciate the time, and I hope to see this podcast go into do some amazing things. I'm looking forward to listening to more stories from others as well.
Thank you. And we'll have the links to your 2 books in the show notes. And if people want to look for your charity, how can they find it?
It's the letkidsfly.com, and that's the website. So you can actually put the link there as well, letkidsfly.com.
Perfect. We'll do that. It'll be down in the show notes. Yeah. And on that note, please follow us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and leave a 5-star review. And we'll catch you guys in the next episode. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Vajira.
Thank you.